You're listening to the International Moving Podcast, your guide to moving to another country, brought to you by SDC International Shipping, LA's finest. An international move is exciting. It's a time to start over, establish a new business maybe, reestablish family ties, or retire where your budget will do more for you. Please enjoy today's episode, and if you have any questions about your international move, give us a call at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Jim for SDC International Shipping. Thanks for joining me for today's podcast episode. Today I'm going to share with you some thoughts, insights into the topic of insurance coverage. I know this is a dry topic. A matter of fact, picking an exciting title for today's episode is going to be a real challenge because as soon as you put the word insurance in there, I know most people's eyes are probably going to glaze over. Insurance is one of those things we think about every so often. If we sit down with an insurance agent to pick out insurance for maybe a new vehicle that you're driving, homeowners insurance, other types of insurance, it always seems like we are paying for different types of coverages and then rarely taking advantage of what those coverages offer if something goes wrong. Hopefully, most of the time, nothing goes wrong, in which case you feel like you're just putting money into this bottomless pit. But if something does go wrong, then you know that you have coverage to help you in what can be a critical time in your life. One of the people that I've worked closely with over the years, her husband took out a life insurance policy to cover the home and give her and their new child that was on the way the right kind of financial security, I guess you would say, to have that in place in case anything ever happened to him. And he sold insurance for a living. And then what happened was probably about a week before their daughter, first child, was born, he was killed in an accident by a drunk driver. And that's an example of one of those things that you hope never happens. But in his case, there was a policy in place, and it made a huge difference in their lives. And so tragedies happen, accidents happen, big, little, somewhere in between. And so that's why we have to deal with topics like insurance, unless you have so much money that you want to be your own insurance. I know that there are cases today where people basically forego having a certain type of insurance on their house. Let's say, for example, you live in a flood zone and you live in a multi-million-dollar house, multi-million-dollar property throughout the coastline. And that's true in several states today, where the insurance coverage in those situations, like Florida is a great example, where hurricanes have come through and wiped houses out entirely, where it's cheaper if you have the money to self-insure than it is to pay that premium to an insurance company every year, where those people, in most cases, will insure for things like fire, and they have enough money stored away to take care of damage that was done to their house. So, but we're talking about insurance coverage in this scenario for international moving. There are all kinds of insurances, and I've been talking about insurance here and there on this podcast. We write about it a little bit on our blog, and there's plenty of information on it too. The basics at sdcinternationalshipping.com, because in most cases, it's difficult to go into great detail on what you would need because your needs are different than someone else's. We don't all share the same types of situations or needs. We don't all have the same budgets, of course. And so what's a good fit for me insurance-wise might be a bad fit for you and vice versa. But there are different types of insurances that you can get on your household goods. But one of the things that brought this topic back to the forefront of my mind was the unfortunate collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. And that happened on March the 26th. And I'll just give you a little bit of the backstory on that. The container ship was called the Dally. It lost power and it collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore at a speed of approximately 9 miles per hour or 8 knots, and the impact resulted in the bridge buckling and collapsing into the water fairly quickly, leading to vehicles being submerged and items on the boat, and construction crew were working. I believe it was on the ship as well as around the boat at the time, or around the bridge. I'm not sure about that, but I know 6 individuals, I believe it was 6 people, lost their lives, and a few others were rescued. And prior to that accident happening, to the actual impact, the ship's crew issued a mayday call, and that enabled the authorities to stop the traffic on the bridge, which averted even further casualties. So investigations into the Dally, which is owned by a company called Grace Ocean Private Limited and managed by the Synergy Marine Group, that is, the ship had undergone 27 inspections since its construction in 2015, and there were 2 minor deficiencies that were identified during those inspections. And so, there's a lot of advancements that get made over time in the areas of safety, and that includes in the shipping industry. They say that ships are safer today than they've been in the past. However, accidents do happen, and serious accidents involving large vessels such as container ships and car carriers, those are significant concerns. So some of the key issues that have come up around this topic is that the increase in the ship sizes have elevated the risks and the environmental impact that can occur when an incident occurs. However, the regulations and safety systems that are attached to the ever-growing size of these vessels have not kept in pace. So in other words, we have bigger ships, but not better regulations or better systems assigned to those bigger ships. Next, there was talk about cargo fires, and those conversations were around things like misdeclared dangerous goods. So when we talk about how items are packed, there are certain items that aren't supposed to be packed. They get packed anyway. They get packed wrong. Things like lithium batteries, and that was a big one, lithium batteries. And they pose a growing risk on container ships and on car carrier ships. Next was the commercial pressures for swift turnaround times at ports, and they said the pressure to increase these turnaround times. And if you think about time being money, I mean, just think about the time that a ship spends at a port being loaded, the actual travel time, and the unloading time. All of this time equals money. So with the increased pressures on swifter turnaround times, it said they've come to the conclusion that these may lead crews to bypass some of the crucial safety checks and verifications that would otherwise be taking place. I heard the same thing in the airline industry. Matter of fact, we were getting ready to board flight number 2 on a 3-flight journey from where I am to my destination. And so there was a flight to Atlanta, then there was a holdover and a flight to Indiana from there. I was coming from Florida, and somewhere in the middle, the techs performed a safety check and the plane failed. So they had to ground the plane until the proper repairs could be made. And although it was really a hassle as far as the flight time goes, of course, you can't put a price on people's lives. I'm glad that we didn't take off in that plane, that whatever type of issue it had, I guess it was pronounced enough to warrant grounding that plane. So whether we're talking about in the air or by sea, accidents can be catastrophic. Thankfully, when we look at shipping accidents and we look at the timeline, we can see that over the years there has been a decline in accidents, which is great, because the repercussions of incidents today involving these modern vessels, which are just massive, they can be catastrophic, as we saw with the Baltimore bridge collapse. So they're going to continue to make enhancements in things like ship design, cargo handling practices, safety management systems. I mean, all these things are going to be important for safety's sake going forward. Now, when we're talking about moving your items, putting your items in a crate, sending them overseas, regardless of the country or the distance, then you have to consider purchasing the right kind of insurance coverage for your household goods and items. And now, if you've already talked to somebody, for example, from SDC International Shipping, if you've already spoken with a relocation specialist or someone on the logistics team, I'm sure that they'll emphasize the importance of securing some kind of insurance. Now, there are basic types of insurance, and there's a whole lot of different various options that are available. When you just look at insurance as a topic overall, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But let me just explain some of the more simpler aspects just so you get an overall idea of what these insurance policies are like and what they cover. First, there's total loss. And total loss coverage ensures that you're fully protected if your entire shipment is either destroyed or lost. For instance, if a stack of containers happens to collapse, that kind of policy, total loss, would provide a reimbursement for the declared value of your belongings. So your belongings go in a container. If something catastrophic happens, then you're covered for the total loss value of that container. To obtain total loss insurance, you have to have a detailed list of all of the insured items inside the container. And while the inventory list created by the mover, let's say SDC, is critical for customs clearance, it may not be sufficient for insurance purposes where more specificity is usually going to be required. So if you're including valuable items, you may need to provide things like sales receipts or professional valuations in order to get the proper insurance coverage. Total loss insurance, and if something happened, God forbid, to somebody's shipment, they can't go and say that I had a collector's baseball cards that sunk to the bottom of the sea and they were worth $100,000. In other words, you would have to have proof of that. You wouldn't just be able to say it or express how valuable it is and have them just go ahead and write a check out for you. So you just think of the things in logical terms. I know sometimes even with homeowners insurance or renters insurance, you can videotape items inside of your house and put that video aside for future reference. You can show how things were built, maybe custom things in the house which were worth a little bit more money, or proof that you had a back issue of some kind of a magazine from the 1920s. Whatever it is that you're trying to insure to get that value back, that's what you want to make sure that there's proof of that with any kind of insurance policy, but particularly we're talking about total loss insurance right now. So total loss insurance is typically less expensive than something that's known as all-risk cargo insurance, as it covers either the entire loss of everything or nothing at all. So total loss means just that. Everything has to be lost. If one or two items are damaged inside, this policy will not cover those one or two items. Next, there's all-risk cargo insurance. All-risk cargo insurance provides coverage for both total loss, which we just mentioned, and partial damage to your shipment. And this is important because despite the shipping company's best efforts, it's impossible to guarantee that your belongings will arrive at your new home undamaged. 99, I would say, out of 100 times, they will arrive at your new home undamaged. That's why you get professional wrapping, professional packing, professional shipping. Everything is done by people who do this day in and day out. If they weren't able to do it successfully, they would be out of business a long time ago. That said, there is a human element. There's always the unforeseen circumstance, equipment failure, all kinds of things can happen. They happen very seldom, but all-risk cargo insurance is an option if you're thinking about your personal items being handled multiple times during the international shipping process, including things like maybe random inspections, storage, and the final delivery of your items by smaller vehicles. Each transfer carries with it the potential for damage. So with all-risk cargo insurance, you're protected against these risks. However, to obtain this coverage, you will need to have your shipment professionally packed by the moving company. Then there's things like insuring vehicles and other valuables, like automobiles, motorcycles, and other licensed vehicles should be insured separately, regardless of whether they're being shipped in a container or by another method. When you're talking with a relocation specialist, they can help you determine the best shipping method to ensure the proper insurance coverage for your vehicle. And then you have to also understand the international moving insurance policies, how they work, because unlike domestic insurance policies, which are governed by state laws, international moving insurance must be truly global in its scope. And these policies are typically offered through a shipping company, as they don't sell directly to consumers. So one advantage of this approach is that the policy can reimburse you for the replacement cost of damaged or lost items at your destination rather than the original purchase price in your home country. So when you're reviewing these policies, just be cautious of those that seem to be too inexpensive, as maybe they're only going to cover a portion of the move. Valid international moving insurance should provide full coverage from door to door. Protection against loss, protection against damage, and protection against weather-related incidents. Remember, the accuracy of your insurance information here is crucial. Only cover items that are legal to ship to your destination country and ensure that the valuations of each of these items are reasonable. So hopefully you'll never have to file a claim, no matter how many times you move in a lifetime. And having the right international moving insurance in place can give you that extra peace of mind and protection for your belongings during that entire overseas move and relocation process. So just know that when it comes to protecting your belongings during an international move, choosing the right shipping partner is just as important as securing the right kind of insurance coverage. And just know that SDC International Shipping has years of experience in facilitating smooth, stress-free relocations all around the world. And as a leader in the industry, they have the expertise to guide you through every step of the process, from the packing and the customs clearance to choosing the right kind of coverage for your individual needs. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode. Talking about insurance isn't one of those things that we do very often. It's not one of the things that we talk about in great detail because everybody's needs are different. I know that if I were moving overseas, I would just choose probably the general coverage to protect all my household items in case of total loss. But then again, the more I think about it, I would probably buy extra coverage for one or two items that are have a specific value to me, sentimental value, old pieces of furniture that are kind of irreplaceable because they're over 100 years old. I think I would take out extra insurance for those things just for that extra bit of peace of mind. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, if you have, please go ahead, share it with a friend, share it online, social media, email, wherever you happen to be. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next week in the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening. Whether you're relocating within the country or moving to the other side of the world, we're here to help from start to finish. Connect with us today at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962.